So what we're going to do today is going to be making a Christmas log. So for that, what we've got here is we're using a square 12 inch by 12 inch cake tin, but what we've done is we've divided it up so it's actually now 12 by 9. We've lined that with greaseproof paper with a little bit of butter underneath it, just so that the greaseproof paper sticks to the edges and the bottom. And now that it's lined, we've measured out some cocoa and some cocoa powder and some self-raising flour. So we've got 65 grams of self-raising flour and 40 grams of cocoa powder. And then what we've got in this bowl is we've got 100 grams of caster sugar and 4 eggs. So to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to take our electric whisk and we're going to whisk this until it's frothy. So now we've got our egg and caster sugar mixture combined, and what we can do now is, using a sieve, we can sieve our flour and cocoa mixture together. Like so. Just to remove any of the lumps in it. And then what we can do is we get our spatula and we can combine these ingredients by folding it together. So all I'm doing is just pulling it up underneath and folding it together until the mixture is completely combined. So we'll just keep going here, folding it over. Making sure you get it all from around the sides and around the bottom. So I've been careful not to take any of the air out of the mixture, and that's why we use a folding motion. And so now we can see that all our mixture is combined, and what we can do is we can take our tin and we can carefully pour that in, like so, being sure to spread it out and get it all into the corners, which we'll do in a moment. I'll scrape around the edges here. Okay, and then I'm just going to spread it out using my spatula to the corners. Get a nice even layer, so that when it cooks in the oven we get a nice level sponge. So I've got the oven preheated to 200 degrees. Probably just about hear the fan in the background. So once we've got it all levelled and into the corners, can then place it in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes. Just make sure you get into the corners. Okay. So we can move that to one side. And now you can see that we've got our level mixture, and I'm going to place that in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes and we'll come back. So whilst the cake is cooking in the oven, I've got a piece of greaseproof paper here, and we're just going to cut this out. It needs to be a bit bigger than the size of the tin. You'll see why in a moment. So we're just going to cut that down. Like so. Now what we're going to do is, with just a little bit of icing sugar, we're going to dust the parchment paper or the greaseproof paper. You need to be quite generous with this. Like so. You can spread that out. Like so. And once the cake's cooked, we can invert the cake onto the parchment paper, and we won't get it sticking to the surface because we're going to work with it while it's slightly warm. It's out of the oven. It's been about 10 minutes or so, and as you can see, it's firm to the touch. So we can now take this out while it's still warm, and invert it on our piece of greaseproof paper that we cut out a moment ago. So I'm going to do that now, and we'll come back in 2 seconds. As you can see, we've got our sponge. What I'm going to do is just very carefully invert this, like so, and then just very carefully what we can do is just work our greaseproof paper away from the back. Like so. So we've got our sponge now, and about an inch in, just need to lightly score with our knife, like so. Just need to make that a little bit more pronounced, because that's where we're going to be rolling in a moment. And the score just helps you roll to begin with. You don't want to be going all the way through, just enough to be able to start rolling. And then what we can do is we just move this to the edge slightly. And then what we can do is we can start rolling, like so. You want to keep, while you're rolling, you want to keep the greaseproof paper in at this point. So you just want to roll nice and tightly. And remember that you do this while it's still warm, because you'll get it to roll a lot better. And then once you've got it rolled, you want to leave it on that edge. So on the edge that we've rolled on, that's where we're going to be resting, like so. So then we can just put that to one side and let that cool completely, like so. So we need to make some chocolate ganache now to cover our chocolate log with, and so what we're doing for that is we're using 300 grams of dark chocolate, and to start with we're just breaking our chocolate into small pieces. So I'll show you a short bit of that now. You'll see here we've already got 100 grams already broken up, and we're just going to break up a further 100 grams, and then we use 300 ml of double cream. We're going to whip that up, and then we're going to heat up our double cream, not to boiling point, just enough to melt the chocolate. So once our cream is warm enough, we'll put our chocolate into it and melt the chocolate in it, which you'll see in a moment. So I'll finish off breaking this chocolate up into our bowl, and then we'll come back to show the making of the ganache. So I've heated up some cream just so that I can barely keep my finger in it. Some double cream. I'll pour our chocolate in, and then with our spoon I'm just going to mix this in until the chocolate's melted, making sure I've got all the chocolate obviously. Just carry on mixing it until the chocolate melts. Carry on doing that. As you can see, it's melting quite quickly. Once this has all been combined, we can let it cool and put it in the fridge so it's nice and thick. You need to make sure it's nice and thick to be able to pipe on the cake. You can see it's a rich dark colour. Still a few lumps in there, so I'll just carry on mixing until the lumps are gone. But we're almost there now. So at this point we'll let it cool down. Once it's cool enough, we'll place it in the fridge. We'll place it in the fridge for a while to firm up, and that'll be ready to put into our piping bag for piping on the cake once we're ready. So our cake is cooled now, and we've got some whipped cream here, 300 ml of whipped cream. What we're going to do is we're going to just carefully just sprinkle a bit of icing sugar down here on our parchment paper, like so, just so that this doesn't all stick as we start unrolling. And all we're going to do here is just carefully unravel and remove this paper, like so. We can put this to one side. We can then make sure we've got enough icing sugar there. Roll this out, like so. So you notice it's still got its rolled shape there. And using a palette knife, all we're going to do is spread our cream evenly over. If you make sure you've got big bits on it all the time, you'll avoid getting too many crumbs everywhere, but it doesn't matter too much because this is the inside. So we just carry on adding our cream, trying to get a nice even spread right to the edges. use it all up here, so I'm going to just make sure I've got it right to the edge. Okay, then once you're happy that you've got your layer of cream on, and it's spread relatively evenly, you can then re-roll the cake, like so. Because it's already been rolled once, it's already still holding its shape. And now what we can do is we can carefully move this to one side. I'll roll it nice and tightly. Move this to one side. We can get our board, or our serving plate. Place our board down. We can then move the cake, once we're ready, onto the board. So I'm just going to wash my hands and we'll get ready to move on to the board. So at this stage, once we've got it all rolled, what we're going to do here is cut at an angle, like so. And then what we'll do is we'll turn this like so. And once this has been covered, you'll end up with the Christmas log with a branch coming out of it. So at this stage we can move this now across to our board. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit and we'll just get this ready in position on our board or our serving plate. Obviously more traditionally it would be on a serving plate. And here this is going to a customer, so we're putting it on a board. And then we're going to have our branch coming off of it. And that now is ready to be ganached. I'll just show you that. So we can get our ganache out, put it in our piping bag, and we're good to go. So we're using the star nozzles to create our bark effect. So you can see now with the large star nozzle, get quite a nice effect. If you look here, you can see you're getting a nice bark effect there. You don't want to let your ganache set too hard. If it does, you just need to bring it up to room temperature again, or just heat it slightly over the stove. Don't hold the your pan over the heat though too much, because it will melt it too much. So you just want to warm the ganache up again basically, and it will get back to a temperature that you can work with. If you use too small a star nozzle, you may find the icing gets stuck a little bit. So a big nozzle is fine. So we've got most of the top done now, as you can see. We can now do the branch, and then we've got the ends to do as well. And then for the ends, we'll put some ganache on the ends, flatten the ends off a little bit, and we'll add an effect on the end with a fork. So for the ends, we can still just pipe it on. We'll flatten it off in a moment. So then we're just going to fill the piping bag one last time. And then the same on the other end. And then we'll grab our palette knife. One more end to do. Go at the branched end there. So I'm just going to grab the palette knife quickly. So all we're going to do here is just flatten the end off a little bit, like so. Doesn't have to be totally smooth because we're going to add a little bit of a ruffled effect to it as well. We'll do the same on this bit. Just flatten the ganache off a little bit. Like so. We'll just smooth it off a little bit here. Smooth this end off. And then we'll do the same on this other end. Just wipe the excess off. Like so. So we're just going to go around now with a fork and create a bit of a ringed effect on the end. So now, as you can see, we've got our squirrels on the end, just for the end of our fork. And what we can do is we can add a bit of decoration to it. So we turn it around to the end that we want, place our message on top, and then what we're going to do is just one last little finishing touch, just with a little bit of ganache on the bottom of a little decoration. This will harden up and stick to the board. We can just stick that in here, for example. So there we've got our finished Christmas log.